Welcome to the Steady Income Podcast, where we believe your job was never meant to be your only source of income. Every week, we explore practical ways to build financial security, create new opportunities, and take control of your future. And today, we're tackling a question that I think keeps a lot of us up at night, especially with how unpredictable the world feels right now. How much emergency savings do I really need?
Oh, that's such a critical question, Ruth. It's one of those financial cornerstones that everyone talks about, but the how much part often feels so vague, right? You hear the general rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months of expenses, but what does that actually mean for my life? Is it enough? Is it too much? Is it even realistic to get there?
Exactly. And I think for so many years, especially early in my career, that 3 to 6 months figure just felt like this impossible mountain to climb. I remember vividly back in 2008 when the housing market crashed. I was working in advertising and frankly, my job felt pretty secure until it didn't. I got that dreaded call into the boss's office and just like that, I was out. My emergency fund, non-existent. I had maybe enough for 2 weeks of rent. The sheer panic was overwhelming. My stomach dropped to my feet.
That's a terrifying feeling, Ruth. I've had similar moments, though thankfully not a layoff like that. For me, it was when I decided to pivot my career completely, leaving a stable but unfulfilling corporate job to build my digital business from scratch. I thought I had enough saved, but the initial income wasn't coming in as fast as I'd hoped. Suddenly, I was dipping into my emergency fund just to pay for groceries and utilities. It really highlighted how quickly even a decent amount can evaporate when you don't have a steady paycheck.
It's so true. And I think those personal experiences, those moments where you truly feel the pinch, are what make this conversation so important. It's not just about a number in a bank account. It's about peace of mind, about having options when life throws a curveball. After my layoff, I ended up taking a job I wasn't thrilled with, simply because I needed income now. If I'd had that buffer, even just a couple of months, I could have been more selective, taken time to network, and found something that truly aligned with my goals. That experience really hammered home the value of a solid emergency fund.
Absolutely. It buys you time, and time is invaluable when you're facing unexpected challenges. So let's break down this 3 to 6 months idea. For some, like someone with a highly specialized skill in a booming industry, no dependents and low fixed costs, maybe 3 months feels like plenty. But for others, say a single parent with a mortgage, 2 car payments, and a job in a volatile sector, 6 months might feel barely adequate. It's not a one-size-fits-all, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And that's where we need to get more granular. When we talk about expenses, we're not just talking about your rent or mortgage. We're talking about all your essential outgoings, utilities, groceries, transportation, minimum debt payments, insurance premiums. Think of it as your survival budget. What do you absolutely need to pay to keep a roof over your head and food on the table for that period?
That's a great distinction, survival budget, because in an emergency, those discretionary expenses, the daily lattes, the streaming subscriptions, dining out, they're the first to go. One of our community members, Sarah, actually shared her story with me just last month. She's a single mom working as a dental hygienist, and her clinic had to close for a few weeks due to unexpected renovations. She had about 4 months saved, which felt okay, but she realized she was budgeting for her usual lifestyle. When the crunch hit, she had to cut back significantly on her usual extras like after-school clubs for her kids and her weekly takeout treat. It made her reevaluate, and now she aims for 6 months based on her bare minimum expenses, not her comfortable expenses.
That's such a relatable story, Lily. It's about adjusting your perception of needs versus wants when the chips are down. I remember when I was freelancing full-time, building my digital business after that layoff, there were months where income was feast or famine. I learned to live on what I called my lean budget. And honestly, having an emergency fund based on that lean budget rather than my fantasy I'm making bank budget was what kept me afloat and sane during those unpredictable periods. It really made me more resilient.
Resilience is key, and it's not just about job loss, is it? We've seen so many different types of emergencies. Think about medical emergencies, even with insurance. Deductibles and out-of-pocket costs can be devastating. Or unexpected home repairs. My cousin Mark had a pipe burst in his ceiling last winter. It wasn't just the repair cost, it was the damage to the drywall, the painting, the lost wages from taking time off work to deal with it. His 3-month fund vanished like that. He told me he wished he'd aimed for more, realizing it's not just one emergency you're preparing for, but a potential cascade of problems.
Exactly. It's a buffer against life. So beyond your survival budget, let's talk about factors that might push that 3 to 6 months number higher. Do you have dependents, kids, elderly parents you support? That instantly adds a layer of responsibility. Is your job highly secure, or are you in an industry prone to layoffs or rapid change? If you're in a more volatile field, aiming for 9 to 12 months might be a smarter move. What's your health like? Any pre-existing conditions that might lead to unexpected medical bills?
And what about your ability to generate income quickly? For someone like me who has built several income streams and has a strong network, I might be able to replace income faster than someone who relies solely on a traditional 9 to 5. That's a huge factor. I always tell people your emergency fund isn't just cash, it's also your skills, your network, and your ability to pivot. But the cash gives you the breathing room to activate those other resources.
That's a brilliant point, Lily. It's a holistic approach. One of our listeners, David, who was laid off from his IT job last year, didn't have a huge cash emergency fund. But what he did have was a side hustle building websites for small businesses. When he lost his main job, he immediately ramped up his side gig, leveraging his network from previous clients. He actually ended up turning that side hustle into his full-time income within 4 months. His emergency fund was partly cash, but a huge part was his existing skill set and client base. He used the small cash buffer to cover the initial dip while he scaled up his services.
What a fantastic example of proactive financial resilience. It's not just about stashing cash, it's about building a fortress of financial security. Another thing to consider is what other resources you have. Do you have access to a line of credit? Maybe a paid-off car you could sell in a dire emergency? While these aren't ideal, they're part of your overall safety net, but I wouldn't recommend relying on them instead of cash savings. Cash is king for emergencies.
Absolutely, cash is king because it's immediate and doesn't come with interest payments or the stress of liquidating assets under pressure. So once you've figured out your personal ideal number, whether it's 6 months of lean living expenses or 9 months because you're self-employed with dependents, the next question is, how do I even start building this? It can feel daunting if you're starting from zero.
It can, but the key is to start small and be consistent. Don't aim for the full 6 months right away. Aim for a mini fund first, maybe $1,000. That's usually enough to cover a small car repair, a dental emergency, or a sudden appliance breakdown without going into debt. Think about it. A flat tire and a tow can easily be a few $100s. An urgent care visit, another couple hundred. Hitting $1,000 is a huge psychological win and a practical first step.
I agree completely. That first $1,000 is like planting the seed, and once you hit that, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment that fuels you to keep going. Think about small wins. Could you sell a few unused items around the house on Facebook Marketplace or eBay? That old guitar, those designer clothes you never wear? Even an extra $50 from selling something is a win. Could you cut back on one discretionary expense for a month and put that money directly into savings? Every little bit truly adds up.
And make it automatic. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking to a separate savings account every payday. Even if it's just $25 or $50 to start, you won't miss it, and over time, it accumulates without you having to actively think about it. The money needs to be easily accessible but separate from your everyday checking account. You don't want to accidentally spend your emergency money on impulse buys.
Yes, absolutely. A separate, dedicated high-yield savings account is ideal. That way it's out of sight, out of mind, but still working for you a little bit. And don't beat yourself up if you have to dip into it for a true emergency. That's what it's there for. The important thing is to have a plan to rebuild it as quickly as you can after that. It's a living fund, not a static monument.
Such an important point. It's not a failure to use your emergency fund, it's a success that you had one to use. It saved you from potentially going into high-interest debt, which would have put you in an even worse position. The goal is always to keep building that financial resilience. And remember, as your life changes, new job, new baby, new home, your emergency savings target might need to change too. It's not a set-it-and-forget-it number.
That's why we emphasize the importance of regularly reviewing your finances. Maybe once a year, sit down and look at your expenses, your income, and your current savings. Are you still comfortable with where you're at? Could you boost it a little more? Could you diversify your income to reduce your reliance on one source, which also acts as a form of emergency preparedness?
Exactly. Thinking about it this way, your emergency fund isn't just about surviving a crisis. It's about having the freedom to make choices even when things go sideways. It's about empowering yourself. Imagine having the flexibility to say no to a job offer that isn't right for you, or to take a few months to recover from an illness without financial stress. That's the real power of an emergency fund.
It's about having a safety net so you can actually leap when opportunities arise, rather than being paralyzed by fear. So, how much emergency savings do you really need? It's a personalized number, driven by your unique circumstances, your risk tolerance, and your financial goals. But the key takeaway is you need something, and it's probably more than you think.
It truly is. So for our listeners today, here's one action item we want you to take before tomorrow evening. Sit down, open a spreadsheet or grab a pen and paper, and calculate your absolute bare minimum monthly expenses. List out your rent, mortgage, utilities, essential groceries, and minimum debt payments. Don't worry about hitting a target yet, just understand your baseline. Once you have that number, you'll have a clear starting point for how much you actually need.
That's a fantastic concrete step, Lily, because knowledge is power, and knowing your baseline is the first step towards building that powerful financial safety net. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lily. This was such an important conversation.
My pleasure, Ruth. Always great to dive into these crucial topics with you.
And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Steady Income Podcast. Ask yourself one question before you leave today. What's one thing I can do this week that my future self will thank me for? We'll see you next week on the Steady Income Podcast.